In Hong Kong, they will install a crane in the elevator shafts, crane up plant equipment all the way to the top floor, and start knocking down every floor one at a time. The surrounding area of buildings is usually so dense that there's no other option most of the time. Pretty cool seeing how it's how some buildings are built too, but in reverse. From the top down, a few years back some high-rise flats in Glasgow were taken down this way. It was really interesting being able to see the different color schemes of the rooms as it was being demolished slowly. It's done a little bit at a time for safety, unlike the explosives which collapse a high-rise roughly within its own footprint. So basically they're disassembling it, top down. In the opposite way it was assembled, bottom up. They typically get excavators to the top floor, which they use to demolish floor by floor going down, getting out the rubble as they go. Can you imagine how nerve-wracking must it be to be set onto the roof of a building in an excavator and be tasked with demolishing it under yourself? There are a couple different ways. The most fun to watch is explosives. They use controlled explosions on vital support structures which can direct which way the building will fall. They can even cause the building to collapse within its own footprint. However, it is risky, so the safer option is to start at the top floors, demolish a section, and crane the debris down to the ground. Why do we never see wrecking balls being used anymore? I remember as a kid I saw a building being taken down and watched the wrecking ball smash it to pieces, section by section. Was that a fluke? I feel like we saw a lot of wrecking ball references in cartoons and TV shows as well. That being said, we also saw a lot of references to quicksand, to the point I figured it was a fairly common hazard, yet never once have I encountered quicksand in reality. I recently watched an interesting video where they go into a little bit of history of explosive demolition and how and why it works. How to blow up a building, or whale. https://youtube.be/2lozon6zec . Why would they want to blow up a whale? If it's very tall, and in a dense area, the only safe way to take it down is to disassemble it floor by floor. The tallest building ever intentionally demolished, J.P. Morgan's old headquarters at 270 Park Avenue, was demolished so carefully it looked more like a construction site than a demolition. https://www.youtube.com/watch?v=upvvsjffngw . In less dense areas, buildings might be fully collapsed in one go. Normally this is done via carefully placing and timing the detonation of explosives on critical support structures to ensure that the building falls within its own footprint. https://www.youtube.com/watch?v=hfqavn6zc . Other times, if damage to nearby buildings is not a concern, buildings can also be toppled like a tree. https://www.youtube.com/watch?v=ohm6b0_fike . I'm not sure exactly why they chose to topple the buildings in that video instead of imploding them in place, but I suspect it reduces the chances of a dangerous incomplete demolition, even though they still screwed up one of the buildings, and makes the debris easier to and safer clean up, since it isn't piled as high. Think that's called a deconstruction, not a demolition. I think we are talking implosion, which is a quite recent demolition technique that comes from decades of study and modeling of how structures collapse. This allows the careful weakening of the structure and preparation such that removing specific supports, in sequence, with shaped charge explosives will cause the whole building to collapse progressively in mostly its own footprint. There are still some structures for which this method would probably not work. Prestressed concrete is one, and possibly steel-framed buildings. It is mostly limited to brick, concrete and steel-reinforced concrete. Bring in Fred Dibna. https://m.youtube.com/watch?v=0l11r2kb. This is a UK character from before the HSE, American OSHA, was a thing. I'm a simple man. I see Fred Dibna, I upvote. Back when I lived with my parents, the view from my room was a large skyscraper which was demolished and replaced with an even bigger one, so I had first-row seats to witness both. The demolition method seemed particularly crazy to me. They used a crane to take a demolition claw machine and set it on the roof of the skyscraper, where it took a few months driving around in circles and demolishing the 50-story building under itself while the crane was used to take the rubble back to ground level. Some companies use jet fuel on their steel beams to cause buildings to collapse on themselves, without damaging the surrounding skyscrapers. Super interesting stuff. I didn't realize her fuel could melt steel beams. I worked supplying tools to this industry. This type of demolition work is either done as described in other posts, or by massive excavators with multiple boom links. They can reach up well over 5 stories. The excavators use various hammers and 2 jaw crushers to eat away at the building. Not mentioned anywhere is that bringing the building down safely is relatively easy. Managing dust and sorting debris is much harder and where most of the expense is. They basically do what they do when they construct but in reverse. The structural system, matrix, is designed to support the level above it. So when you demolish level by level, you don't run into issues. So you basically just break apart the concrete and rebar, then just send the stuff down a chute or place into beds which get lowered down with a crane. This is a slow but methodical process. During this kind of demolition, they also constantly observe and measure the behavior of the building to ensure that it isn't tilting, otherwise moving or shaking in undesired manner. They either used controlled explosions to collapse the building upon itself or go floor by floor using a machine. Sometimes they'll have a crane with a wrecking ball that's dropped into the middle while the excavator does the rest. It usually depends on what the city finds acceptable to demolish a building and what level of asbestos is in the building itself. Asbestos is highly poisonous to people and demolition has a high chance of it getting spread into the air. The older the building, the higher the chance that asbestos is present. For buildings like this, controlled explosions is often ruled out because of the sheer amount of asbestos that could be pushed into the air and affect many people at once. For cases like this, excavators are the safest way to go while special teams go through and try to remove as much of the asbestos as possible before each floor is demoed. Gravity pulls objects straight down. From a Terran perspective, buildings are designed to stand straight up. Evenly break the parts designed to keep it straight up, generally starting at the top, and it goes straight down. Demolition is actually a very sequenced process, rather than smashing away with a big ball and chain, which is what typically springs to mind. Best way to demolish a building safely though is easily described as reverse to construction. So basically, once it's clear of furniture etc., you'd do a soft strip of internal fittings, such as doors and door frames, skirting, non-load-bearing internal walls and services. Then say windows, roof covering and frame. Then floor by floor, to the main structural walls. It's all really about segregation of waste too, so as much as possible can be recycled as easily and safely as possible. Hire a reputable structural engineer to build a model of the structure, then sequentially remove portions that fit the contractor's intentions while verifying safety factors at each step. Not long ago here in Dallas, they imploded a large building, but the center core didn't collapse. It was kind of leaning, fantastically dangerous. Can't recall how they finally knocked it down. Remove the interior conduct, asbestos abatement etc. Then they start demolishing from the top down, throwing debris down the emptied elevator shaft and collecting them at the base of the building's podium. In some cases they will actually have heavy equipment on the roof of the building. Mega jackhammer. Went to New Orleans a few years ago. They were tearing down a building 2 buildings over. Was oddly close to where the construction was. They started at the top. Was literally just smashing down walls and shit. There was a building in London on St Mary's Axe that was demolished from the bottom up as the floors were designed in such a way that they hung from the top of the central core. So the floors disappeared on after another from the bottom until only the central lift shaft remained, and then that was demolished from the top down. Controlled Demolition Inc. implodes buildings all over the world. And this is a documentary about one demolition. https://u2.be/y0zarm4fr1y . You can follow what's going on with NYC's Hotel Pennsylvania. https://untappedcities.com/2022/01/31/interior-demolition-hotel-pennsylvania/. Our building next door was taken down, and can confirm that they just go floor by floor from the top. To my knowledge, the tallest building ever intentionally demolished was only 30 or 40 floors. So for the really big ones, that question has yet to be answered. It is hard to understand if you're not in the industry. Think about what it must take to build a skyscraper. The number of people, engineers, involved who know exactly how much concrete and metal need to be placed in exactly the right spots for the building to be safe. All of those people exist and help to build the building. They also create records, plans and schematics, so that other people can know too. Now realize that all of those people are also needed to take the building down safely. They know exactly how and why the building is safely staying up, so they can figure out exactly how to safely take it down. Lots of parts of a building do not hold it up, they just create extra space for people. Only a few parts of a building actually hold it up. Knowing all of the details about that can help people to take a building apart safely. I work in the industry, and that is the most ELI5 summary I can come up with. Well, not always well. In Boston, a worker just got killed when his vehicle fell through the floor and 9 stories to the ground during a demolition. Sad face.